Hey, what's up, Dave? How you doing, man?
How's it going, buddy?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'm actually under the weather today. My energy level is not great.
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
Oh, I'm going to apologize in advance to everybody for that. Yeah, Joyce, is it pronounced Ashok, Mr. Patel? Is that correct?
Yes, you are perfect.
Thank you, Ashok. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. And Joyce, welcome. Francisco, welcome. And Birkin's here. Hello, hello from LA. If you have questions, guys, great time to address them. While I'm just kind of getting us teed up. We got 5-6 minutes here before we're going to start. So if there are lingering things from last week or anything of that nature, I guess, please, by all means, let me know what's on your mind. Let's see here.
So we are going over everything. And are we going to go over the scripts as well? Because I know that we have talked about lots about prospecting. And the script is the one thing, I would love to learn about it.
Yeah. And what we're going to talk about, so there's about 70 plus scripts that were uploaded into your resource center, probably somewhere between this morning to even 10 minutes ago, that correlate with this prospecting session. And instead of just reading to you guys script after script after script, which is just terrible, to be quite frank, we're going to talk about the approach, like what's the actual purpose of a script, number one, and also what's the approach that that we want to use when it comes to varying client types or variant contact types. So whether it's a sphere of influence who I know and that I speak to on a normal basis versus someone who maybe I haven't spoken to in a really long time versus a past client versus like a networking event. We're going to talk about in different, differentiate the kind of the difference between the goals that we have in those conversations. We'll talk about high impact activities and the conversion conversation of that. And I'm going to give you guys just a ton of scripts that we'll do a little bit more work on the script side during the accountability session. Then I will be like just reading you scripts on this side. We're also going to kind of tie some of the stuff from the last two sessions together. So there'll be like a little bit of review of like, hey, this is what this was. Hey, this is what this was. And then we're going to go into conversation starters. Okay. Let's see here. Welcome to everyone else who's just joining in. Hey, Sharon, how are you? Mary, seeing everybody that I can see on the screen. Jessica, hello. And there's Thomas Lee, New York City. What's up, man? How are you? Thomas Lee, what office are you out of in New York City?
I'm at 110.
You're 110. Okay, cool.
Where are you based out of?
I'm in Westchester County, just north of the city. I'm in the CSC offices, Chirag Shaw offices, which is in West Connecticut today. But I live and reside in Pelham Manor, which is just outside, like,
Sweet. Yeah, it's right there.
out of the Bronx.
Yeah. I just had a quick question.
Yeah, hit me.
So I'm like separating my contact list, and I know in the first session for the SOI, you said if you can't say hi to them, they shouldn't be in your SOI, which I understand.
Yeah.
But I did like a mailer list, and I have like literally like I think like 6,000 people, and obviously they're not my SOI, but it's still okay to like group them in a separate group and then send mailers to them, right?
Of course, keep in mind that like everything eventually when it comes to if you look at kind of like the levels of conversion, right? Most people, when it comes time to convert to a client, end up into our sphere of influence. Like even if it's a call or two before they convert, et cetera, like a mailer calls me, now I have your contact information, you're interested, we're talking, you're now in my sphere of influence. And you're now also going to be in that specific funnel. So if you don't convert right away, but you called me because you might be interested in 6 months, I'm calling you again, like every 45 to 60 days, right? I might even have a more interested pattern for you based on how that conversation went. But yeah, I mean, you could be mailing thousands and thousands and thousands of people, but until I actually have some sort of recognition with relationship, they're not my sphere of influence.
Right. Because I was just trying to like narrow down my CRM list because it's just gotten like so bloated. I don't
Yeah.
even know who's who. So like when you're like just focused on your SOI, and I think it's 250 people, which I have. I'm just like, well, what do I do with these other people? But if it's like low risk, like no financial investment, and you literally on the Compass app, I'm just sending it to them, whether it's like your monthly newsletter or just whatever, then why not just keep them in
Yep.
like a separate list, maybe like a mailer list instead of your SOI list?
Yeah, totally. Totally agree. And it's one of those situations where, you know, whether we talk about circle prospecting, whether we talk about, you know, other forms of networking or referral propositions, some of those, you know, have kind of a unique call pattern. I think that's one thing that you want to keep in mind with your weekly and monthly efforts. One of the conversation pieces, guys, and welcome, I'm going to start with this today, is just, I had a conversation with, I'll call him a pre-team leader. They're right at that stage where they've been asking the question for probably 6 months. Is it time for me to start a team, et cetera? Like, how do you know when it's time to bring on a member, to bring on help, to bring on coordination? I have always been a staunch believer that your prospecting efforts is the litmus test of whether or not you are ready for a team member. And that means that the minute that my time is being spent on clients to the point where I cannot accomplish my prospecting, which is your number one main role and job, it is time to hire assistants at that time, right? So it's like the minute I start to sacrifice, you know, I couldn't pick up the calls today, or I couldn't do reach outs today, or I couldn't do networking today, or I couldn't do what I normally did to generate and keep my wheelhouse full. Right. The second you start to get into that ladder of like, I'm now serving clients, I'm showing property, I'm out at listings all day long. That's when you know that it's time to start to really look at it. And it's not the same exact moment for everyone, but that is probably the best indicator in regards to just the prospecting environment. This is the one environment, guys, that you need to protect. It needs to be your primary across the board, because it is the heartbeat of your business when it comes to income generation and when it comes to consistency of income. And so with that said, I also want to show you guys today, because I know that there's been some questions about like, hey, are we covering this today and whatnot? This is, for lack of a better term, just the next couple events that you guys have within this prospecting sessions. Okay. So like today, we're going to talk a lot about scripts. We're going to talk about, you know, the details. There's about 72 scripts that have been uploaded into the resource center that are correlative to this session. Next week, we're going to be talking about follow-up. So I'm not going to be talking a lot about the sequence of follow-up today, like how I do follow-up, how I approach follow-up, the number of follow-ups, what to say on follow-ups. I'm not going to be covering that today. Today, I'm talking a lot about like outreach, sphere of influence, what to say, how to convert a conversation into a high impact activity. Those are things I want to look at today, right? After that follow-up side for next week, we go into then tracking, measuring, optimizing our prospecting efforts. It's like looking at data, understanding how to self-diagnose an issue and figure out like, okay, if I'm not seeing results, right? Like what could it be? And I'm going to give you guys a way to break those things down. And then we're going to get into like cold calling and networking and circle prospecting and digital lead conversion. So if your questions today are about any of those, please don't take it personal. I'm just going to say, let's shelf those until those sessions, because those sessions are designed for those conversations. All right. As normal, feel free to put your questions today in the chat. For this learning session, I'm not going to take a lot of verbal questions. In fact, I'm going to take away the power to unmute yourself until the end. And then when we get into the accountability session, that's the best time, guys, for us to really dive in deep with scripts and talk about words and vernacular and situations. Okay. Let's see here. So let me just share my slides with you today. Maybe not. Give me 2 seconds. just loving technology today. And sorry guys, if it sounds like my voice is a little off, I've been under the weather. And so my energy level is just stressing a little bit today. Let's see here. Here we go. Just try it this way. All right. So taking action, guys. As a reminder, I want you to keep in the forefront that outreach frequency. I really want everyone on this call to be doing at least 10 calls a day, right? 10 efforts. I understand that that's not always realistic based on how you're organized, based on your time schedules, etc. But I can tell you that in most cases, if you are organized with your list, 10 calls takes about 20 minutes, okay? The majority of your efforts are not going to get answered within the first outreach. Like people aren't just picking up the phone at noon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Hey, how's it going, Thomas? Hey, Joyce. Like, let's talk. Like, it's not happening a lot. You're getting a lot of voicemails. You're getting a lot of text messages. You're going to be doing some follow-up there, right? But I want you to just remember that your list size obviously helps dictate kind of that law of frequency. And I want to make sure that, you know, at some point in time within your prospects, your sphere of influence's minds, within that 6 to 8 week kind of notion, I want you crossing their bow. I want them to hear from you. I want them to not just see an email or a mailer or something of that nature, like actually hear your voice and get a communication from you. That should give you the best idea of like how many people do you need to call in order to get to people every 6 to 8 weeks, okay? Targeting 30 to 60 days, we just kind of covered that. I'm just going through some reminders for you guys. Multiple modalities when you are doing reach outs, regardless of the script that we're going to talk about today. Again, keep in mind, we want to increase the social guilt in a communication. I hate to leverage that angle, but it is one way to kind of like rattle the cage per se of the people that you are reaching out to, is do multiple modalities, multiple mediums of communication every time you dial a number. So if I'm calling Dave Wiley, right? And I'm like, hey, Dave, how's it going? He doesn't answer. I'm leaving him a voicemail. He's going to see a missed call. He's going to see a voicemail. He's going to hear my voice, right? My voice, my tonality, guys, is everything when it comes to prospecting. I'm then going to follow that with a text message that simply says, hey, Dave, just left you a voicemail. Would love to talk about blank, whatever my topic of my phone call was for that day. And we're going to cover some of those topics. All right. So keep in mind, multiple modalities. It will help create a higher abundance of responses from prospects. It's just a habit I would want everyone creating with how much digital communication we've got today. One little sale point again on phone calls, it's your tone, guys, and write these statistics down. Write down these numbers because I don't have a slide for it today, but write down these percentages. Words alone, just words, are 7 to 10% of our communication. Words are 7 to 10% of our communication. So the what you're going to say, right, is 7 to 10% of the overall message that the brain is going to get communicated. All right. Now sound. So this is your tonality. This is your speed, your cadence, your pace, right? Sound is 25 to 30% of our communication, 25 to 30%. And then visual is 60 to 65%. 60 to 65%, right? We are visual creatures when it comes to messages. And so a voicemail, guys, think of it this way. A voicemail is 4 times more impactful than a well-written email, 4 times, because words is only 7 to 10%, right? Sound alone is 25 to 30%. That's no words involved. So when I have words and sound, that's 40% in regards to message management. So voicemails are a lot more impactful. They allow you to convey a lot more complexity, but at the end of the day, you are expressing a beingness. Has anybody ever heard the saying that language is the dress of thought? You ever heard that comment before? Language is the dress of thought. Think of it this way. The way that you structure a sentence is based on how your brain puts together what you're trying to say, right? So the way that you dress things up is going to be different than one person to the next. So as we get into scripts today and we start to talk about like what to say and how to do reach outs and all of those things, I want you to keep in mind that the way that I have dressed these sentences are based on the way that my mind sees things, right? In fact, I'm not a huge fan of scripts. You guys are going to hear me talk about that a lot today. One other reminder, prioritizing your efforts every single day, guys. Top priority is follow-ups. That's people that are interested. And that is your sphere of influence, reach outs. So that is someone who like you got into conversation with, or like you're doing research for, you're searching for property on, like anybody who you're following up on that isn't quite a client yet, right? They are top priority as well as sphere of influence. Past clients are your secondary, past clients. Cold outreach is third. And fourth is your digital outreach, your ads, your messages, your mailers, your everything else you're doing on social media stuff, priority-wise as far as prospecting efforts. And what I see is when someone doesn't feel like they're organized or they feel really worried about what to do with 1, 2, or 3, they spend all day on number 4, all day. So if you are that individual that is spending all day prospecting online through Facebook, or through Instagram, or through those things, number 1, keep in mind those lists, those people, that's a rented space, right? Welcome to the world of TikTok. Goodbye. Now it's back. Not really sure what's happening, right? So do not rely on those environments to be your contact and media realm, right? Lists are all about your data. And when you own your own list, guys, there's nothing more powerful than that. There's nothing more valuable right now in business than your database, okay? So those are our priorities. So let's get into like what to talk about. What do we say when it comes to a reach out? Now, I mentioned last week, I said there are some things that I really like to kind of position and discuss when it comes to outreach, because people, A, they love to talk about themselves, and B, they love to give their own opinions about things. And so you're going to get this list as well as a ton of scripts that are going to go on with this conversation today. But I wanted to kind of go through a few things just so you guys can understand more of the purpose of outreach and why we want to have the focus of these discussions in the manner that they are. Scripts are great. What scripts are great for is not reading. They're not great for reading, guys. I can promise you, if you take any script that I've ever put together and you use it verbatim, you're going to sound like a robot. It's going to be as effective as a rock, right? But what scripts are great for is stimulating your mind to go, oh, okay, that's a great way to structure that sentence to approach that conversation. That's a good topic point. That's a good way to maybe even end that conversation or start that conversation. You're going to have all kinds of ideas that get generated by reading scripts. And so I really do challenge you guys, go through the scripts that we've provided for this session and read them. Because you're going to go, oh, I like that approach, or, oh, I like what he talked about here, or I like the way that that started. You're also going to go, I hate that. That sounds robotical. I don't like the way that that started. That's not the way I would ever talk to a client. Like, those are all going to be normal responses, guys, to scripts. Okay. So keep that in mind as we're going through that. I am going to spend a lot of time always on what's the purpose, and not so much get caught up on like, how did you say it? Did you say it in the right way? Like, your tone makes more sense than what you say. All right. So asking questions. Guys, get into these conversations where you're not just expecting the other person to hold the conversation, right? When you are calling somebody in their, like, they're in their busy day, they had no idea you're calling, it's a prospecting call. If they answer, understand that your time is short. And so there needs to be a reason for your call, right? So think about the bottleneck within the consumer brain. The minute that they pick up the phone, they're like, oh, it's Mike. Hey, Mike, what's going on? The brain is now scanning immediately. It's on the defense, right? And it's going, okay, what's he calling about? So if I don't get to that pretty quick, if I start going to the like, how's the family? What's going on? They're like, okay, well, why are you calling? Like get to that, because I'm in a busy day. It's not because I don't like you. It's not because we're not friends, but like my mind is starting now to get suspicious, right? Or it's starting to sense that you're uncomfortable because you're not getting to the point. So I must say out loud, guys, using my words, the reason I'm calling today is because blank. I wanted to get an opinion. Now, whatever the reason is, Here's the secondary check that the brain you've got to pass through other people's brains. They've got to say, well, does that make sense? Like, is this question now just a question to create conversation with me? Or is the question and its logical presence, does it make sense within the correlation of this relationship? So if I said to Thomas, I'm only using Thomas because I can see you here on my screen, Thomas. If I called Thomas up and I said, hey, Thomas, you know, I'm calling today to discuss the real estate market, right? Now, that's a fairly generalized approach. Why do I want to talk about the real estate market when I'm in real estate? I've got to answer that question for his brain, because his brain now in the subconscious is wondering, you're a real estate guy. Like, why are you calling me to talk about the market? So I've got to come up with a reason for these things, right? So when you pick a topic source and it's like, okay, I want to get somebody's opinion about the market. Well, now I'm a little bit more personalized. Hey, Thomas, I'm calling actually because I'd love to get your opinion of the real estate market today. I want you to go a little bit further. Ask yourself why. Why do you want my opinion? Right? What would make sense that I'd be asking Thomas's opinion for if it's not a sales call, right? Because nobody likes to have a sales call. What I want, my entire goal and accomplishment with Thomas on a prospecting call, is to get him into conversation about real estate in order for me to possibly identify something that might be of interest to him, in order then to suggest, right, a high impact activity and convert into a follow-up activity or an action for him, right? So with Thomas, I might say, you know, hey, Thomas, I'm calling. I wanted to get your opinion of the market today because my sales manager, my interest in understanding how my clients are seeing the market right now oftentimes differs from the actual data that I see. And so I'm just wondering, like, what do you think of the real estate market right now? If you wouldn't mind taking a couple minutes and just chatting with me. Right. And Thomas is like, oh, I think it's overpriced right now. I think it's slow. He's going to give all kinds of opinions. This is where I get to really listen though, right? I get to really listen and hear, okay, what is Thomas's perspective? Does he think it's a bad market? Does he think it's a good market? I can then follow up with questions in this conversation about, remind me, Thomas, you own a property, you're in a co-op. I see Thomas is in New York City. Are you in a co-op? Are you in a brownstone? Like, what is it where do you reside? Oh, I currently rent. And so okay, that's great. And again, I'm taking notes if I don't have these notes already for this client or for this prospect, right? And so I'm just going through this conversation about how do they arrive? What are their sources? Where do they get information? And then at the end, I might say, well, it sounds like, based on the data and your experience of the marketplace, it doesn't look like, any opportunity for you to purchase. Is it the market that's keeping you out now? And I can test that. And if Thomas is like, yeah, I don't think I could afford purchasing something in the New York City real estate market right now. Right. And so I could say, I would love to drop something off that could actually give you like a performance report or a comparison report of a rent to own or a rent to sale, kind of situation. Are you around Thursday or Friday next week, or Thursday or Friday this week? I'm going to be dropping by in your area and I'd love to just drop you off an analysis. Would that be okay? And he's like, yeah, sure. Drop something off. Fantastic. Right. So now I've gone from a general conversation, investigated his opinion. I gave reasons for the phone call, and I transitioned into a suggestive activity, which is a very casual basis, right? It's a very casual basis in which now I'm going to drop something off, and it will give me the ability to have a deeper rooted real estate conversation with Thomas. Does everybody make sense so far? Okay. So I can ask about real estate problems. I can ask about rentals. I can ask about sales. I can inquire about investments. I can talk about experience. You can talk all about, guys, tax laws. This is a great time right now to be talking about tax season, tax laws, tax savings, anything that expresses to a prospect that you are a resource and that you solve real estate problems. Those are our only two goals. Okay. That is the purpose of conversation. You guys will get all of these bullet points, guys, with all of the resources from today's session. All right. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And that way I can make sure that I'm handling. Let me just take a look. Good. Some of you guys are already answering questions. Thank you for answering questions about the scripts. Thoughts on voice memo through text. I'm okay with that. right? I have no problem with that. Some people, when they see the voice memo, keep in mind, guys, click technology. There are a lot of studies that show that even a singular click, additional click than what we're used to, causes us to pause and not look at that communication. And so if via text, I would normally get the text and I can see it. If I now have to click play and listen or be in a space to listen, right? You're now delaying my interest level in actually listening to your conversation. And with a phone call with a voicemail, I get 2 notifications of missed contact, as well as then the text. So am I okay if the text also has the voice as long as you're doing the phone call and the voicemail? Sure. But it's more about like the little cluster of miscommunication notifications that creates the higher probability of response. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's go here. So conversation groups, I'm going to target these 4 groups for the purpose of today's session, at least when it comes to like scripting and discussion. With Social Sphere, guys, as we just talked, the entire target is to enter into a conversation, get past the barriers of the mindset, which means like I've got to answer why am I calling and why it makes sense that I'm calling very quickly on the call. At some point in time, I'm going to get into a suggestion, right? Let me suggest X. Can I drop something off? I'd love for you to do this. I'd love for you to do that. At some point, I've got to hit that suggestion, and then my purpose is to follow up then with that activity. So if that's dropping off a CMA, if that's sending them or setting them up on a property search, if that's getting them pre-qualified, like whatever it is, the suggestion portion of that, and I'm going to show you guys some transitions within the scripts. The suggestion portion of that is the real key ingredient here. Conversation should be natural. I'm calling to talk about real estate. I'd love to know your opinion of the marketplace, how rentals are doing, how sales are doing, what's going on with waterfront property. Try to relate it obviously to who they are and what their interests are, what you know about them in the past. Okay. But then get into a suggestion based on where you see this conversation going. You know, the best converters and salespeople aren't the ones that are necessarily the best prepared or the best well-versed. They're the ones that can actually listen in a conversation and seamlessly make that suggestion based on a series of activities. Okay. And there's roughly about 6 activities for both buyers and sellers, right? 6 each that I feel like are really good high impact activities. And you guys can create more than that. Sphere of influence, but with no contact. So one of the questions that we've gotten over the weeks from several people has been, well, Mike, what about that conversation where it's my sphere of influence and I haven't talked to them in a while, right? There's one additional step then that we're going to take, and it's just called acknowledge. I am just going to acknowledge for a very, very, very brief moment the fact that we haven't spoke for a while. And that's it. There will be nothing else. I will give you one alternative to this in a second, but there will be nothing else. I'm then treating it as I would any other business call out there. I'm starting conversation. The reason I'm calling is XYZ. So it might be like, hey, Thomas, this is Mike. I know we haven't spoken for a while. That was it. That's the entire acknowledgement. Don't make a big deal out of the time in which it has been since you have connected with this other human being. Okay? That is a problem when you're trying to sell somebody something. It is not a problem when I'm calling to try to provide value to somebody, get their opinion, understand them, have a conversation. It's not a problem that it's been 3 years, 10 years, 5 years, whatever it is. Okay. So we make it a bigger problem because these relationships are so important to our business. Their mind is thinking about it for less than 1/10 of a second, right? Oh, I haven't talked to Thomas in a while. Oh, he addressed it. Cool. Why are you calling, Thomas? That's literally what the mind on the other side is doing. That's it, right? Now, they may want to talk more about like, hey, what's been going on? How's your wife? Totally fine now to go into like a personal conversation and catch up, right? But don't feel like you have to. And I wouldn't lead with that ever. Stick with the business, okay? And then it's conversation, suggestion, activity. Past clients, though, this is where we have a little bit of obviously a transition. And I'm going to show you guys a diagram of how I treat past clients versus new contacts versus sphere of influence here in a second. But we enter conversation. That's still important, right? I'm calling about, you know, have you upgraded the house? What's going on? How are things? How's the block? How's the neighborhood? How's the kids? That's okay, right? I'm calling as a catch up. I then want to get into what's called a problem identification phase of this conversation. Okay, which means I'm going from conversation to something that helps them understand that I solve problems. And we're going to go through this in the follow-ups, but I solve problems. The worst thing you can say, guys, to your past clients is, do you know anyone who wants to buy and sell real estate? Why is that terrible, by the way? Why is that terrible? And yes, Jessica, I would put that question in a voicemail. I might say, hey, I would love to talk about your opinion, and leave it in the voicemail. It's cringy. It makes it about you, not them. It sounds desperate. And here's the problem. Even if I can convey, guys, that same word and tone, okay, the mind, how it's going to register that thought is, okay, well, let me think about anybody who's looking to buy and sell. The only people that have talked to me about buying and selling already have an agent because they are buying or selling already. Does that make sense? The problem is people don't go, I'm getting ready to buy or I'm getting ready to sell. They do that when they've already started to talk and engage a professional. What they say before that is, I hate my landlord, right? Or our house is too big, or I can't afford this anymore, or I really wish we lived here, or those are the conversation pieces. They talk about their pains to their friends. And so instead of asking your contacts, guys, especially when you're reaching out to past clients, instead of asking them, do you know anybody who wants to buy and sell? Start asking, do you know anybody that has these problems? Because those are the people I want them to identify, right? Problem identification is helping them understand it. Has anybody talked about, like, you know, hating their place that they live, or having a landlord problem, or wanting more space, or it has a new, you know, baby on the way, or something of that nature that might be an indicator of a move? That's what I'm looking for. And I would love to help them because I'm great at solving that problem, right? I address those as problems. I address me as the solution, because it's also easier, guys, for a referral source to call up a friend and say, hey, you know how you were having that landlord problem? I actually think I have a guy who could help you. Than it is for them to call up somebody random and say, hey, you know, I know we were talking the other day about you wanting to buy a house, and I've got a great real estate agent I'd love to refer to you, right? I want it to always be about addressing and solving the problems. That is the fastest way to referral business, okay? All right, let me go to the next one here so we can get to this other part. Networking, which we are going to go through an entire session of networking, but it's conversation, problem identification, and referral as well. Now, with networking, what is it that I also want from a networking situation? I want their contact information, all right? I really do. I want their contact information. And so, like, some of the scripts that you guys are going to see, let me stop this share here and just share one of the script elements. Let's see here. Let's go to this one. Thomas, can you just let me know, do you see scripts on your screen? Yes, you guys are good. Okay, perfect. So, like, networking scripts are all about basically stating, you know, like, here are some of the things that I do. What do you do? It's the back and forth. But the transition, right, is, you know, I do this. I'd love to follow up with this, or these are the things that I specialize in. And it's always asking, can I grab your contact information? I'd love to stay connected. I'd love to follow up. Can I grab your email or number to keep in touch? I don't want you guys to always go to the email because it's easy, right? People can ignore you on email. I always start with phone number, and I force them to normally say, I'd rather just give you my email. That's cool. I'm down with that, right? Because and it also tells me that I have not connected with you enough as a person to get your phone number yet. But I always just typically start with the phone number. So these scripts, they're all going to look pretty similar. They're all going to be basically like a PDF page. You've got about 72 of them. The other thing that you are going to have, and let me pull these up, are the high impact activity scripts. And so, for instance, if I'm talking to a buyer or a potential buyer, and I'm in conversation, this is a conversation transition. It means I'm talking to them on the phone, and then I might say, hey, you know, one of the best ways to figure out what you really want to see in a home or what you'd want in a home is to just go look. Like, even if you're not ready to buy yet, I'd love to take you out and see some property and do this, yada, 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 yada. That's just, again, like show property for fun kind of approach. So it lists kind of the approach. It'll give you then a script. There's 6 of them for buyer activities. There's 6 of them for seller activities, CMAs, property performance reports, all of those kinds of things. Okay. So this is what the scripts look like. And I'm going to do a little bit more on this, guys, in our accountability group. So I do want to shift over there so that I can actually take questions and get, you know, more into your rooted issues and what you want to see. So I will jump over there and I'll see you in just a minute.